Reborn at cliff's edge, snatched my jade back, kicked her off. Play the full story in one go. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. The exciting story begins right now. Elder sister, the jade pendant you're wearing is of excellent quality, and its carving is quite intricate. Could you please take it off so I can take a closer look? The mountain wind at the cliff's edge brought with it the chill from the mountains behind Yuan Temple. It made me shiver violently as my vision cleared from the brief dizziness. I saw the face before me, gentle and delicate on the surface, yet hiding a greedy look in its eyes. She's my half-sister, Chu Wanfu. In that instant, every drop of blood in my body seemed to freeze. My heart pounded wildly against my ribs inside my chest. Just moments earlier, I had been in that cold, dim backyard, listening to the loud noises coming from the front yard, the sounds of celebration for the wedding of my fiancé, Shui Changqing, and Chu Wanfu, with my crippled legs. I vomited blood amidst excruciating pain, with a heart filled with resentment and humiliation. I took my last breath. But now, the mountain wind, the cliffs, and Chu Wanfu's outstretched hand, all of them tell me clearly that I've returned to the very moment before the tragedy happened. Instinctively, I took a half step back. My heels were now on the edge of the cliff. Rocks rolled down into the bottomless abyss with a rustling sound. In my past life, it was right here that I thought, as the older sister, I should take care of my younger sister, unaware of the danger. I handed her the jade pendant that my mother had given me, but just as I handed it to her, her delicate face turned cruel. She pushed me off a cliff hundreds of feet high. The feeling of weightlessness when falling off a cliff, the sharp pain of branches scraping my cheeks, the crisp sound of my legs breaking upon hitting the ground, and the despair of being left alone for 2 full days and nights. All these memories keep haunting me like a persistent curse. Eldest sister, what's wrong? Seeing that I didn't move, Chu Wanfu's eyes showed a hint of impatience. Yet, she forced herself to show concern. She took a step forward, her hand almost touching the jade pendant at my waist. Is it because the mountain wind is too strong, making you feel dizzy? Maybe I should help you back. She said she wanted to help me, but her hand suddenly gathered strength and pushed hard against my shoulder. The cruelty of the actions is exactly the same as in the previous life. But in this life, I'm not the defenseless Chu Mingshuang anymore. Almost the moment her hands touched the hem of my clothes, driven by hatred ingrained deep in my bones, I twisted my waist sharply to the left, moving my feet in a snake-like, staggered manner. Chu Wanfu clearly didn't expect me to suddenly dodge in such a desperate situation. She used all her strength in that push, but her hands went empty. Due to the immense inertia, her entire body rushed forward uncontrollably. Ah! Uncontrolled screams tore from her throat. Her pupils dilated instantly as she waved her arms frantically in the air, trying to grasp anything that might save her. And in the moment when her body was about to fall over the cliff, I coldly reached out my hand. I didn't try to grab the person who was holding her. Instead, I precisely seized the jade pendant that she had snatched from my waist during the chaos and was now clutching tightly in her hand. With a slight snap, the red string with the jade pendant was torn apart by me. The jade pendant fell into my palm, carrying a slight, cool warmth. Chu Wanfu, on the other hand, lost all balance, like a kite with its string cut. She let out a shrill scream as she plunged headlong into the misty abyss. Help, sister! Save me! That sound echoed between the cliffs, along with the sound of something falling through the air. It grew fainter and fainter, until finally, along with the dull sound of branches breaking, it completely disappeared into the thick fog at the bottom of the cliff. I stood quietly on the edge of the cliff, looking down at the bottomless abyss, listening to those long-absent echoes. A cold smile slowly appeared on my lips. In my past life, it was me who fell. It was I who was disfigured. I who had my legs broken. It was I whose internal organs were damaged, leaving me barely alive thanks to precious medicinal herbs. My kind father, Grand Tutor Chu, though feeling somewhat guilty toward me, still acted without hesitation to protect the family's reputation. He not only suppressed the scandal of Chu Wanfu attempting to murder her elder sister, but also took advantage of the situation to arrange for her to marry into the Marquis of Yuan's household as the wife of the heir apparent, thus securing her a life of glory. And I could only die in their newlywed night. Like some worthless person who cannot bear the light of darkness, I slowly retracted my gaze, lowering my head towards my palms. It's a beautiful jade pendant with excellent quality. It features simple, rustic cloud patterns carved onto it. It's a relic that my mother left behind during her lifetime. In my past life, I couldn't understand why Chu Wanfu insisted on taking that jade pendant away from me. It wasn't until just before my death that I heard that Yuan, the commander of the Xinjin guards and the infamous man who was said to be ruthless and merciless like the king of hell himself, had personally brought generous gifts to the Yuan Marquis' residence as a gift. It was then that I learned from the servants that this jade pendant wasn't some ordinary ornament at all. It was actually a keepsake given to Yuan by his mother during difficult times in his life. Chu Wanfu stole the jade pendant and took credit for this life-saving act. By leveraging the power of the Xinjin guards, she firmly established herself as the crown prince's wife. I clenched my fingers tightly, gripping the jade pendant firmly in my palm. The hard texture of the jade hurt my palm, but it kept me completely alert. Now isn't the time to be happy. Chu Wanfu's biological mother, Antigua, is an extremely troublesome person. My father recently planned to remarry, in order to seize control of the household once my stepmother entered the family. Antigua must have secretly instigated Chu Wanfu to attack me in my past life, because the legitimate daughter was seriously injured. My father had to put off his plans to remarry. This allowed Antigua to take control of the household. She even opened my mother's dowry chest when Chu Wanfu got married. Chu Wanfu has fallen. The guards sent by her father will arrive soon. I need to come up with a perfect excuse to get away. I crouched down, picked up a sharp piece of rock from the cliff edge, and deliberately made several cuts on the back of my hand and arm. I controlled the force perfectly, so the cuts resembled scratches from struggling, without actually causing any serious damage or ugly scars. Then, I messed up my hair and torn off half of my sleeve, making me look disheveled and terrified. After finishing all this, I tucked the jade pendant into a hidden pocket in my undergarments. Then, I closed my eyes and pinched my thigh hard. When I opened my eyes again, my eyes were filled with tears of terror and despair. I turned around clumsily and ran down the mountain path I had come up along. My desperate, trembling cries for help instantly shattered the silence behind Yuan Temple. They reached those servants from the Taifu mansion who were carrying torches and rushing up from halfway up the mountain. Help! Someone please come quickly. My younger sister has fallen. My shrill cries instantly tore through the night of the back mountain. The light of the torches resembled dancing dragons, quickly approaching me. The leader of the guards, seeing my disheveled hair, torn sleeves, and arms covered in deep red bloodstains, knelt down in shock. I trembled violently, pointing at the dark abyss below. Tears streamed down like beads from a broken string, bringing my performance as a terrified sister to its peak. The abyss was extremely deep, and the cliffs were steep. The soldiers spent the entire night and most of the morning tying ropes to descend down the cliff. Finally, they managed to pull Chu Wanfu up from the bottom of the cliff. The moment they were pulled up, even the guards, who were used to bloodshed, couldn't help but gasp in shock. Chu Wanfu was covered in blood. Her right leg was broken in a grotesquely twisted position, with jagged bone fragments piercing her skirt. Her face, which she used to take great pride in and which usually evoked sympathy, was covered in wounds caused by thorns on the cliffside. The deep wounds were so severe that they completely disfigured her face. She lay unconscious on the stretcher, breathing barely. If it weren't for the faint rise and fall of her chest, she would have resembled a dead body. I lowered my eyelashes, hiding the cold glint of extreme satisfaction in my eyes. I cried all the way back to the Grand Tutor's residence on the stretcher. Inside the main hall of the Grand Tutor's residence, the strong smell of blood mixed with the bitter scent of medicine created an oppressive atmosphere that made it hard to breathe. My fuyu! A shrill scream erupted from the hall. Antigua didn't even have time to tidy her hair before she rushed towards the stretcher like a madwoman. When she saw Chu Wanfu's disfigured face and broken leg, her entire body convulsed. and her eyes instantly filled with blood. In the next instant, she suddenly turned her head around, staring at me like a venomous snake. She stood up and rushed towards me. "It's you, Chu Mingshuang. It must be you who are jealous of Fuer's beauty, and who cruelly pushed her off the cliff. You vile woman. I will make you pay for what you did to my Fuer." Her sharp nails rushed straight towards my face. I didn't try to avoid them. Instead, I simply closed my eyes in despair, as if I had been completely terrified. "How dare you!" With a stern shout, a purple sandalwood cane struck the bluestone bricks with force. Antigua was firmly held down by the maid, leaving her no choice but to kneel on the ground reluctantly. Chu Taifu, who was sitting in the chief seat, their good father, had a deathly pale face at that moment. He glanced at Chu Wanfu on the ground, and a hint of pain flashed in his eyes. But when his gaze turned to me, that pain was quickly replaced by a cold, scrutinizing look. Recently, he's been busy trying to find a new wife. What he fears most is instability within the household. Now, with both his legitimate and concubine-born daughters out and about, one stands upright and normal, while the other has become a pariah. If rumors spread that the elder daughter plotted against her younger sister, the Chu family's reputation would be ruined, and his plans to remarry would surely fail. "Mingshuang, kneel down." Father's voice was icy. "When your sister woke up." Though unconscious, she kept repeating, "My elder sister pushed me." As the eldest daughter, how did you take care of your sister? How did she even fall? Upon hearing this, Antigua immediately kowtowed repeatedly and cried her heart out. "My lord, please hear me out. Fui has always been obedient and sensible. If it weren't for someone's deliberate attempt to harm her, how could she have fallen off the cliff for no reason?" The eldest lady, believing herself to be the legitimate daughter, has always looked down on me and my daughter. Now, she has gone so far as to commit such a cruel act. Please, my lord, stand up for Fui. Facing this relentless onslaught of slander, I took a deep breath, knelt firmly on the cold floor tiles, kept my back straight. My eyes were slightly red, but no more tears fell. Since my father suspects me, I have no way to defend myself. All I can do is prove my innocence with my death. My voice trembled, yet it carried an unyielding determination. But before I die, please let me show my father one thing. With that, I suddenly pulled back my tattered sleeve, revealing those sharp bloodstains to everyone. Then I pointed at the torn part of my right sleeve. "Father, please look at the scratches on my daughter's hands. They're all from the inside out. Also, this outer garment of mine has been torn apart from the right side of the chest. The soil on the back hill is slippery. If what Antigua said is true, and I really pushed my younger sister over the cliff from behind, then the marks from her struggles should be on the back of my hands and back." I raised my head, meeting my father's scrutinizing gaze without flinching. My words were clear and firm. "The truth is, when my younger sister said she wanted to see the jade pendant my mother had left me, I lowered my head to untie the string. But suddenly, she lost her balance and rushed at me. In her panic, she grabbed my right collar and arm tightly, almost dragging me down into the abyss with her. If I hadn't managed to break free at all costs, it would have been me, Chu Mingshuang, lying on a stretcher, disfigured and with broken legs. At this point, I couldn't help but choke up, with tears welling up but not falling. If father doesn't believe me, he can send someone to check the footprints by the cliff behind the house. Let them see the signs of struggle on the cliffside. Then they'll know whether it was my sister who rushed at me, or me who pushed her. The lobby fell dead silent in an instant. My father's gaze lingered on my wounds and clothes for a long time. The doubt in his eyes gradually faded, replaced by clear-mindedness after weighing the pros and cons. He was a clever man, and also a politician. Footprints and wounds couldn't be faked. More importantly, as the eldest daughter, I was engaged to Shui Changqing, the heir of the Yuan marquis family. A concubine daughter who has been disfigured and lost her legs is completely worthless now. On the other hand, the legitimate daughter, who is innocent and about to marry into the marquis family, is the true hope of the Chu family. Enough. The father slammed his crutch on the ground, cutting off Aunt Gua, who was about to cry out again. His voice was filled with uncompromising coldness. Fur played carelessly and almost caused trouble for her elder sister. That's the truth. Anyone who dares to spread rumors about this incident outside the mansion will be beaten to death on the spot. Antique's crying suddenly stopped. She stared at her father in disbelief, her lips trembling violently. Finally, she understood that he was willing to completely abandon Chu Wanfu for the sake of the family's interests. She slumped to the ground, her eyes vacant. Then, she suddenly raised her head and looked at me, her gaze filled with undisguised hatred and resentment. I knelt there silently, maintaining an expression of pitiful survival after disaster. While inside, I couldn't help but sneer. I know Anqua's plans all too well. Once Chu Wanfu becomes useless, she loses her most valuable bargaining chip. But she certainly won't give up so easily. All she can rely on now is the illicit relationship between Chu Wanfu and Shui Changqing. She'll definitely try to force me to give up this marriage arrangement, so that Shui Changqing can take over and marry that disabled woman. The father rubbed the bridge of his nose, waved his hand tiredly, signaling the servants to carry Chu Wanfu back to the side courtyard for treatment. Then he turned around and walked away. The people in the hall gradually dispersed. Aunt Gua stood up with the help of the old woman. As she passed by me, she deliberately lowered her voice and said through gritted teeth, in a tone audible only to us two, Chu Mingshuang, don't get too proud just yet. For being so heartless and disregarding relationships. Your retribution is yet to come. Looking at her face, twisted with jealousy, I didn't back down. Instead, I straightened my torn clothes, leaned in close to her ear, and replied in a very gentle voice, Auntie, have you gone mad with fear? I smiled, my breath whispering against her ear. Yet my words were as cold as shattered ice. By affection that you speak of, do you mean the affair between Shui Changqing and my younger sister behind the rockery in the Western Garden? Without my knowledge. Or do you mean that red gold and ruby paved hairpin he secretly gave my sister not long ago? Antique's body stiffened suddenly, her pupils constricted to their smallest size. She stared at me as if she'd seen a ghost. Her lips trembled, but not a single word came out. I watched with satisfaction as she stood there, terrified. I stepped back, adjusted my sleeves, and looked down at her from above. Rather than losing your temper uselessly here, it would be better if you used your head. The Dingyuan marquis family has strict traditions. Shui Changqing is a hypocrite who values his military career more than his own life. If you really believe he truly loves your sister, then go to the marquis' residence now and see whether this so-called noble young master will dare, at this critical moment, risk angering my father and bringing your disfigured, crippled daughter into the family. With that, I refused to look at her paper-white face anymore. I turned around and, along with my personal maid Xixia, headed straight back to my Shuanghua courtyard. As soon as she stepped through the door, Xixia quickly closed the windows and doors. She brought hot water to clean the bloodstains from my backhands. Her eyes reddened with concern. How could you get such serious injuries? Young lady, what if scars remain? It's just a minor cut or two. Compared to being devoured alive by someone, it's nothing at all. I let her apply the medicine, but my gaze remained fixed on the candle flame on the table. In this life, I must not only cancel that disgusting marriage with Shui Changqing, but also make them pay for their greed. However, for a woman in the inner chambers of the palace, it's extremely difficult to initiate a divorce on her own. The slightest mistake could land her with the reputation of being jealous and disobedient. I need to find someone powerful enough to back May, a person whose displeasure neither my father nor the Dingyuan marquis family can afford to PR. Oh Voke. I waved Xixia away and took out the white jade pendant that I had taken from Chuanfu's hands. Under the candlelight, the jade emitted a gentle, smooth luster. Qi Yuan, the commander of Xianjin Wei. This man was the most ruthless tool of the Danning dynasty. He oversaw the imperial prison and monitored all officials. His actions were cruel and heartless. Countless high-ranking officials trembled at the mention of his name. Yet, who would have thought that this living devil had once received a life-saving grace from my mother when he was young? And this jade pendant was the promise he made then. I went over to the writing desk, unfolded the Qingxin Hall paper, and dipped my brush in ink. Instead of writing the letter directly, I pressed the jade pendant onto the paper and carefully traced the unique cloud pattern markings on it with a charcoal stick. Then, I folded the tracing and placed it inside a plain-colored envelope with no markings. Qixia, I called out softly. Qixia immediately pushed the door open and entered. At the young lady's command, tomorrow morning, leave the mansion and go to Baofeng pawn shop in the southern part of the city. Don't use the main entrance. Go to the back alley and find the shopkeeper with a scar on his eye. Give him this letter and say, a relic left by an old friend. I've been sent to deliver it. I handed her the envelope and whispered, remember, no matter what he asks, you must say you're acting on orders. Under no circumstances reveal your identity. After delivering the letter, leave immediately. Baofeng Pawn Shop is a secret operative of Xianjin Guard in the capital. In my past life, right before my death, Chu Wanfu boasted to me while I was on my sickbed about how she had gotten in touch with Yuan. She revealed this secret out of sheer pride. Now, this secret belongs to me. After arranging everything, I finally felt exhaustion wash over me like a tide. That night, I slept very soundly, without even experiencing the biting cliff winds from my past life in my dreams. Early the next morning, screams of agony and the loud cracking of porcelain could be heard from the western courtyard. According to the maid sent to gather information, Chu Wanfu had woken up when she realized that her right leg was completely numb and saw her face wrapped up like a zongzi and covered in blood in the mirror. She went mad. She destroyed all the furniture in the room and bit two maids who tried to hold her down. Antigua cried bitterly in the room. Holding her in her arms, the mother and daughter whispered something to each other. Then, Antigua's confidant, Granny Gue, sneaked out of the Grand Tutor's residence through a side door. Miss, Antigua has gone in the direction of the Marquis of Dingyuan's residence. Qixia said softly beside me. I was carefully trimming the dead branches in the bonsai when I couldn't help but sneer at those words. Aunt Guo really couldn't hold back any longer. Chu Wanfu was useless now. To grasp Shui Changqing, her last hope for survival. Aunt Guo must have used the tokens of their past affair to threaten Shui Changqing. Shui Changqing appears gentle and kind on the surface, but in reality, he's extremely selfish and heartless. If he were to find out that Chu Wanfu had not only become useless, but was also trying to blackmail him with personal feelings, he would surely explode in anger. But what worries him even more is the possibility that this matter might be exposed and ruin his career. So, he'll definitely come. Not only that, but he'll also sneak into the Grand Tutor's residence under the cover of night, trying to get his revenge. Qixia, go and bring out those 200-year-old ginseng roots from my warehouse. I put down the scissors and washed my hands. My younger sister has been seriously injured. As her older sister, it's my duty to go and see her. Meanwhile, I should also let father know that something seems amiss in the western courtyard tonight. He should be extra careful. Night fell quickly. Dark clouds obscured the moonlight, and the entire Taifu mansion was enveloped in a gloomy silence. I wore a dark-colored cloak and stood behind a rockery not far from the western courtyard. I watched silently as the lock on the back courtyard side door was quietly turned from the inside. Before long, a tall figure dressed in a gray cloth robe and wearing a conical hat slipped through the door like a guilty cat, hidden by the darkness. The figure headed straight for the west wing room where Chu Wanfu was located. The man in gray pushed the door very gently, clearly having bribed the maid in charge of the courtyard. With a faint creak, the figure quickly disappeared into the west wing room, and the door was closed tightly behind him. I pulled my cloak tighter around me. The cold wind blew through my collar, but it couldn't extinguish the burning desire in my eyes. In my past life, Shui Changqing always acted in a refined and upright manner, winning my complete devotion. I never even suspected that he had an affair with Chu Wanfu. Now, stripped of his hypocrisy, this so-called heir to a noble family turns out to be nothing more than a scoundrel who would climb walls and sneak through dog holes just to preserve his reputation. Miss, shall we go invite the master now? Qixia stood beside me, her palms sweaty with nervousness as she spoke in a hushed voice. There's no need to rush. My gaze became fixed. as I stared coldly at the window paper through which the dim light of candles seeped through. When it comes to catching thieves with the goods in hand, he can simply claim he entered by mistake. Once they start arguing loudly, the night watchman arranged by father will happen to overhear everything. The soundproofing in the side rooms isn't very good. In the dead of night, even attempts to suppress arguments can't prevent the sounds from leaking out through the cold wind. Changqing. You've finally come to see Fu Chu Wanfu's horse. Broken cries were filled with desperate joy. Please take me with you. My elder sister won't accept me. My leg is broken. Only you can save me. Let go of me first. Shui Changqing's voice was filled with unmistakable disgust and impatience. He spoke in a very low tone. Look at yourself right now. How am I supposed to take you with me? How could the gate of the Dingyuan marquis' residence tolerate a disfigured cripple like you? For a moment, the room was filled with dead silence. Then, Antqua's sharp voice rang out. Do you really want to abandon me? Back then, you and my daughter Fuer had sworn vows in the Western Garden, promising to find a way to end the marriage between the two families and marry her instead. Now that she is in trouble, if you dare to ignore her, I will tomorrow use the peony hairpins and letters you gave me to spread rumors along the main streets, so that everyone in the city can see what a real person the son of Lord Dingyuan really is. You ignorant woman. How dare you threaten me? Give me the box. With a crisp clap of thunder, the sound of heavy objects hitting the ground and a woman's screams echoed through the room. Right now, I didn't even need to do anything. Outside the courtyard, a blinding blaze had already erupted. Father Chu, the Grand Tutor, wore a dark crimson robe and strode into the western courtyard with a solemn expression. Behind him were a dozen guards, each carrying torches and steel knives. In moments, the entire courtyard was completely surrounded. Break the door open for me. Father's voice was filled with thunderous anger, and even his hand, which was accustomed to holding a pen, trembled slightly. Two burly guards stepped forward and kicked the carved wooden door with force. The door crashed backward with a loud bang, kicking up a cloud of dust. The scene inside the room was suddenly exposed to the light of the fire. Shui Changqing's bamboo hat had fallen off his head. With one hand, he was tightly gripping Antqua's neck, while with the other, he tried to snatch the redwood box she was holding tightly in her arms. On the bed, Chu Wanfu, wrapped in thick white cloth, resembled a dying insect, crawling desperately on the ground, trying to grasp Shui Changqing's legs. The moment the door was forced open, Shui Changqing turned his head violently. His usually gentle and handsome face was now as pale as paper. His eyes filled with utter terror. Uncle. Uncle, he let go of her as if shocked by an electric shock. He staggered back, his lips trembling violently. His knees gave out, and he fell to his knees on the ground. The father was so furious that his eyes nearly popped out. He slammed his rosewood cane heavily on the bluestone pavement, producing a dull thud. What a proper and polite crown prince. What kind of upbringing does the Dingyuan marquis family provide? Sneaking into the Grand Tutor's residence in the dead of night, engaging in improper behavior with my concubine and illegitimate daughter. Shui Changqing, what do you think your own reputation is worth? What about the reputation of the Dingyuan marquis family? And what about the reputation of our Chu family? I stepped forward from the shadows at the right moment, my steps unsteady and my face deathly pale. When I saw Shui Changqing inside the room, my eyes widened in disbelief. Tears streamed down like beads breaking from a string. I staggered, barely managing to stay standing by gripping Zhixia's arm tightly. Prince. How come you're here? My voice was mournful, every word dripping with sorrow. I played the role of an innocent daughter-in-law who had been betrayed with great conviction. You and my second sister. How could you? Ming Shuang, please listen to my explanation. When Shui Changqing saw me, it was as though he had grasped his last straw of hope. He tried to get up and approach me desperately. It's them. That mother and daughter schemed to trick me into coming here. I had no choice but to do this. Shut his mouth, the father snapped sharply, his chest heaving with anger. Someone, tie up this lunatic who has broken into our home. Tomorrow morning, I will personally go to the Marquis of Yuan's residence and demand to know how exactly he intends to settle this marriage affair. Several fierce-looking guards immediately stepped forward, roughly forcing Shui Changqing to kneel on the ground with his arms tied behind his back. They stuffed a piece of rag into his mouth. The once glorious crown prince now lay there, covered in dirt. Writhing in agony from humiliation and fear, Aunt Gua and Chu Wanfu were terrified beyond recognition. Crouched in a corner, trembling so violently they couldn't even cry, in the face of my indifferent observation. This farce completely exposed Shui Changqing's hypocrisy and Chu Wanfu's lack of any real plans for the future. Only after my father ordered that the western courtyard be completely sealed off did I return to Shuanghua courtyard, covering my face and pretending to be heartbroken. Under the sympathetic gazes of the maids and old women around me, the moment the door closed, my face remained expressionless, cold as ice. Miss Ji Xia carefully took out a small, pure black piece of iron from her sleeve. The iron surface had no intricate decorations, with only the character Qi engraved in delicate strokes. This is the item that the shopkeeper at Baofeng Pawn Shop told me to bring back. He didn't ask any questions, just gave me this piece of iron and left a message. I took the iron token, which exuded a somewhat cold aura. With my fingertips, I gently traced the sharp inscriptions. My heart beat faster involuntarily. What did he say? The shopkeeper said that the master has already checked the tokens. Ji Xiao swallowed hard, speaking in a low voice, filled with reverence. The master knows that there has been some trouble in the household. It's not appropriate for a young lady to travel at night. He said that on the first day of the week, she can go to Daxiangguo Temple to offer prayers for the household. By then, he will prepare hot tea in the quiet water dwelling at the deepest part of the backyard. Waiting for her to arrive, I lowered my gaze and clenched the dark iron token in my hand. Qi Yuan truly lived up to his reputation as the living king of hell in charge of the imperial prison, had connections everywhere and was extremely cunning. I only wonder, what guise will this powerful military commander, who holds great influence over the entire court, wear tomorrow when he meets me, the daughter of an old friend who seeks to repay his kindnesses? Jing Shueju, located on the back mountain of Daxiangguo Temple, is far removed from the bustling activity of the front courtyard. All that remains are the clear chirps of birds and the gentle sound of mountain springs hitting rocks. I left Shisha waiting outside the courtyard and pushed open the slightly ajar bamboo door alone. No incense burned inside the room, only the faint scent of tea made from Mengding stone flowers, brewed with boiling water. A young man dressed in dark-colored clothes sat behind the tea table. He wore no armor or sword, and even his hair was simply tied back with a wooden pin. Yet, just by sitting there, the fierce aura that seemed to emanate from his very bones, something one would expect from someone who has spent years in the midst of bloodshed and violence, made people unconsciously speak in a softer voice. This is Qi Yuan, the person whom everyone feared in his past life. The living king of hell was now staring at me with his bottomless black eyes. Before her death, my mother said that this jade pendant was worth more than 1,000 gold pieces. It should not be used lightly, unless it's a matter of life and death. I stepped forward, placed the white jade pendant gently on the table, and pushed it toward him, my expression calm. Today, Ming Shuang dares to use this pendant to ask for your mercy. Qi Yuan glanced down at the jade pendant. His long fingers picked up the teacup and swept away the floating leaves on the surface of the tea. His voice was low, making it impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. I thought that, with this pendant in her hands, Miss Chu would ask me to ensure the prosperity of her Chu family, or to arrange a marriage with some noble from the royal family. If there's a poisonous snake lying nearby, ready to devour anyone at any moment, then even if one enjoys 100 years of glory, it's still impossible to enjoy it peacefully. I faced his intimidating gaze without flinching. Moreover, Lord Dingyuan is the kind of man who always tries to cover up any problems that arise. Last night, Shui Changqing caused a lot of trouble in the backyard of my house. This morning, my father sent him to the Lord's residence to seek justice. But Lord Dingyuan will never easily agree to cancel the marriage. In my past life, though I didn't experience what happened last night, I was well aware of how the Dingyuan Marquis family operated. When the stakes are high, what's the point of having any sense of shame? I leaned forward slightly. My voice kept low. Ding Yuan Ho will surely sacrifice his own interests to protect his position. He'll act like he's heartbroken and devastated. He might even beat Shui Changqing half to death right in front of my father. Then he'll blame Aunt Gua and my younger sister, claiming they used seductive tactics to trick him. In the end, all he needs to do is offer a few boxes of gifts and say some insincere words like "I won't let Ming Shuang suffer any harm." Not only will the marriage not be cancelled, but our Chu family will also be forced to accept the situation out of respect for both families. Qi Yuan paused slightly. A hint of interest appeared in his cold eyes. He set down his teacup, and his long fingers tapped gently twice on the sandalwood table. Miss Chu is so astute in reading people's hearts. I'm sure, before coming to see me, she already had a plan to overcome any obstacles. A faint smile appeared on his lips. He took out an unmarked envelope from his sleeve and held it out to me with 2 fingers. The thing you wanted was prepared by my men last night. My heart trembled as I reached out to take the envelope. When my fingertips touched the slightly rough paper, I immediately realized that it contained several thick documents. Shui Changqing has always prided himself on being upright and honorable, but in reality, he not only owes 30,000 taels as debt at his secret gambling den in the western part of the city, but also has a mistress from a brothel in Lushu Hadong. That mistress is already 5 months pregnant with a son. Qi Yuan's voice was calm, as if he were discussing the weather, yet each word was like a blade, striking right at the weak point of the Ding Yuan marquis family. Your father spent his life upholding integrity and honor. If the Ding Yuan marquis tries to use our friendship to exert pressure on you, show him those IOUs and the contract that binds your mistress to him. I'd like to see how the Shui family can still have the face to continue this marriage arrangement. I clenched the envelope in my hand, feeling cold sweat on my palms. Half of it was due to the terrifying reach of Qi Yuan's influence, and half was the ecstasy of finally breaking free from the quagmire of my past life. With these pieces of evidence, Shui Changqing's perfect facade would be completely shattered. The Ding Yuan marquis family would not only have to cancel the marriage, but also endure this humiliating loss in order to silence the Chu family. Moreover, once this matter became public, Aunt Gua and Chu Wanfu's self-righteous deep affection would be reduced to nothing but a joke. Such great kindness deserves no thanks. I stood up and bowed deeply to him. I will remember today's events forever. The jade pendant has been returned to its rightful owner. From now on, the Chu family has no more claims against you. We will never bother you again. With that, I turned around and prepared to leave. Time was of the essence. I had to get home before my father fell for the flattery of Marquis Ding Yuan. Chu Mingshuang. Just as I was about to step through the bamboo gate, Qi Yuan's deep voice came from behind me, carrying a hint of solemnity and meaning. I stopped in my tracks and turned to look at him. He remained seated behind the tea table, his gaze piercing through the rising tea smoke and resting on my back. Although Marquis Ding Yuan is a tricky old fox, he's still the easiest to deal with. Those who will truly turn against you to save their own lives are the mother and daughter in your household, who've been driven to their last resort. Now that this situation has reached this point, if we don't take drastic action, once they regain their strength, this fire will eventually burn back onto you. I clenched the envelope hidden in my sleeve. A look of severity, even colder than the winter outside, flashed in my eyes. Without stopping, I left Jing Shueju. The carriage rushed back to the Grand Tutor's residence at full speed. As soon as it came to a stop in front of the door, I saw the Grand Tutor's personal servant, who was extremely anxious, stamping his feet on the steps. Upon seeing me get off the carriage, he rushed forward to me as if I were a lifeline. "Young lady, you're finally back. Marquis Ding Yuan and the heir himself have come to apologize in person. They're now in the main hall in the front yard. Our master is too embarrassed to refuse their demands. Aunt Gua, who must have heard about this somehow, is kneeling outside the hall, wailing and threatening to beat her head against the pillars." The pillars in the main hall of the front yard were chilled by the bitter winds of deep winter. Before I and Xixia could even step onto the stone steps, Aunt Gua's shrill, desperate cries pierced my ears. "My lord, Fui is your own flesh and blood. Now that her reputation is ruined, if even the heir refuses her, She'll have no choice but to cut her hair and become a nun. Please, my lord, out of years of friendship, give Fui a chance to live on. Through the slightly ajar door, the Duke of Dingyuan's sighs of distress could be heard. Brother Chu, it's indeed Changqing who was foolish in this matter. But that night, Changqing drank a little too much. It's inevitable that someone with ulterior motives might take advantage of that. Alas, after all, it's Changqing's own lack of composure that caused this problem. What do you think? The two families have been friends for decades. We certainly can't let a minor dispute within the household ruin our relationship. Changqing's rightful wife will always be Ming Shuang. As for Wanfu, the Duke's household will arrange for her to be brought in through the side door in a small sedan chair, so that she won't suffer any harm. What do you say? This is quite an interesting way of putting it, my lord. So, the legitimate daughter of the Chu family is supposed to share her husband with her half-sister, all in order to earn the reputation of being virtuous and generous. I sneered, brushed aside Xishia's hand that was trying to pull back the curtain, and stepped through the threshold with steady steps. Everyone in the room turned their gazes toward me. Marquis Dingyuan's face stiffened, while my father, Grand Tutor Chu, had a deathly pale complexion, his chest heaving violently. Shui Changqing, who had been kneeling in the center of the hall, pretending to be unyielding to the point of death, showed unmistakable guilt and embarrassment the moment he saw me. Ming Shuang, this is an elder speaking. What are you doing here? Isn't things chaotic enough already? Although my father was scolding me, his tone reflected his concern for my reputation, fearing that I might get involved in such shameful matters. Father, please calm down. Your daughter shouldn't have entered the main hall without permission. But just now, upon returning home after praying, the doorman handed me an anonymous letter from an unknown sender. Upon reading it, I was terrified and couldn't afford to delay even for a moment. I hid the sharpness in my eyes and put on a look of shock and pain. I took out the letter from the hidden pocket in my sleeve and presented it to my father. The father took them with suspicion. After taking one out and glancing at it, his previously iron-gray face turned deathly pale. Then, he violently threw those documents at the Marquis of Dingyuan's face. You wretched scoundrel Shui. Look at the good son you've raised. Is this the gentleman who made a momentary mistake you spoke of? Dingyuan Ho was stunned by the insults. He bent down to pick up the papers scattered on the ground. When he saw the black characters on the white paper and the bright red fingerprints, the composure on his old face vanished instantly. His lips trembled so much that he couldn't utter a word. 30,000 tales of illicit money, all documented in black and white, with signatures everywhere. I looked down at Shui Changqing, who suddenly raised his head. His face as pale as death. My words were like knives cutting through air. Not to mention that charming Miss Ruying from Willow Tree Alley. The fetus was a boy. If you do the math, it means she became pregnant exactly 1 month before the prince and I agreed on our wedding date. The prince wasn't only willing to spend vast sums in gambling halls, but he was also extremely devoted in matters of love. It's unfortunate that my younger sister, whose mind was blinded by desire, truly believed that the prince and she were so deeply in love that he couldn't marry anyone else but her. You're lying. This is slander. Shui Changqing rushed at those contracts like a madman. When he saw the words written on them, he was stunned as if struck by lightning. He collapsed to the ground, muttering helplessly, "No way. How is this possible?" Ruying's contract of sale was clearly hidden by me in a secret place. The moment he said that, it was tantamount to admitting guilt. Madame Gua, who had been thrashing about outside the door, suddenly stopped crying. As if someone had choked her, she rushed inside, grabbing Shui Changqing by the collar. Her eyes were almost popping out of their sockets. 5 months pregnant. You actually had a mistress who bore your child outside. What were all those vows you made to Fuer then? You wretched beast. You've ruined my daughter's life. Shui Changqing was already in a state of extreme fear and despair. When Aunt Gua shook her, she pushed her away violently, screaming with a fierce expression, "Get out of here. If it weren't for you and your daughter's greed for the wealth and status of the Marquis family, constantly bothering me day after day, How would I have ended up like this today? Ding Yuan Ho was so furious that he trembled all over. He raised his hand and gave Shui Changqing a loud slap, causing blood to flow from his mouth. Shui Changqing collapsed heavily onto the blue bricks. The father closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, his gaze was filled with cold determination. Marquis Ding Yuan, if these items are sent to the censorate, you know better than I do whether your family's title can be preserved. The marriage contract is hereby revoked. From this moment on, the Chu and Shui families are severed forever. No more contact. No more encounters in life or death. Someone, show our guest out. In the dead silence of the room, only Antigua sat slumped on the cold floor, staring at the empty doorway, letting out wild screams that sounded like both crying and laughing. After the farcical annulment of the marriage at the Marquis of Ding Yuan's residence, the capital was in an uproar these past few days. Shui Changqing was utterly disgraced. The Marquis of Ding Yuan had him beaten half to death with family discipline, then rushed him back to his hometown in a carriage. His pregnant concubine was forced to take an abortion-inducing potion and sold into the lowest-class brothels. Meanwhile, the western courtyard of the Grand Tutor's residence was dead silent, like a tomb for living people. Upon entering the western wing of the house, a strong smell of mold and medicine hit the nose. On the bed, Chu Wanfu appeared emaciated. The splints around her broken leg hadn't been removed yet. She lay there, lifeless like a fish that had lost all its moisture. Aunt Guo was mechanically feeding her a bowl of brown rice porridge. Hearing the door open, Aunt Guo suddenly turned her head. Her eyes, sunken deep in their sockets, emitted a poisonous glare the moment she realized it was me. I waved my hand, and Xia approached expressionlessly, placing a food tray heavily on the round table with its missing corner. When the lid was lifted, a bowl of rock sugar bird's nest porridge, still steaming, came into view. Over the past few days, Auntie has gone to great lengths to scheme. She even sold the precious red gold and jade inlaid hairpin she cherished, just to buy off Chui air from the kitchen, so that she would add something to my soothing soup. I picked up the bowl of bird's nest and walked slowly toward her, looking at her with a half-smile. Unfortunately, Chui air was too timid. When faced with punishment, she confessed everything. This bowl of tonic, laced with enough truth-inducing medicine, I've brought back to you intact. Antigua's thick porcelain bowl crashed to the ground with a loud noise. The sticky brown rice porridge splattered everywhere. She stared fixedly at the bowl of bird's nest. All the color drained from her face. And then, to everyone's horror, she let out a terrifying cackle. Chu Mingshuang, you truly are a stubborn, unyielding wench. Aunt Guo suddenly stood up, screaming frantically as she pointed at my nose. How dare you act so arrogantly? Your mother, who came from a merchant family and had a short life, managed to take the position of legitimate wife merely by relying on some money. If it weren't for you and your mother, my Fui would have been the rightful daughter of the Grand Tutor's household. She should have married into a noble family with honor, rather than ending up as a worthless person like now. I watched her ugly behavior with cold indifference, casually fiddling with the lid of the cup with my fingertips. My tone was as casual as if I were discussing the weather. So, back then, you tampered with mother's herbal medicine, causing her to develop a condition related to blood heat. She died in her bed, didn't she? In my past life, right before I died. Chu Wanfu whispered the secret to me, boasting about it proudly. Now, I'm simply reopening a scar that's already healed. Antigua was stunned, seemingly not expecting me to be aware of this. But in her utter despair and hatred, she had long lost her sanity, left with nothing but reckless madness. So what? She deserves to die. She stole Master's heart and took the place of the Chu family's mistress. I've been serving her tea every day. Why should I do that? I only regret not poisoning you little wretch along with her, so you wouldn't come along and ruin my Fui today. Which? You vile woman with a heart of snakes and scorpions. A loud scream rang out outside the door. Like thunder, the door was shoved open violently. My father, Chu Taifu, stood there, trembling in the cold wind. His face was pale as paper, and his eyes were red with anger as he stared fiercely at Aunt Gua. Antiqua's laughter stopped abruptly, as if cut off with a knife. Her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees, trembling violently. My lord, please hear my explanation. It was the young lady who forced me to do this. It was she. I heard with my own ears you admitting to plotting to murder the mistress. How dare you still try to deny it? His father was so angry that blood rushed to his throat. But he forced himself to swallow it down. He stepped forward and gave Gwitha a fierce slap, splitting her lip and causing her to fall onto the broken porcelain shards. The always refined and dignified Grand Tutor now stared at his concubine, who had been by his side for years. His eyes were filled with utter disgust and hatred. Our Chu family, with its noble traditions, has raised such a vile wretch as you. Someone, bring her here. Several burly old women rushed in like wolves and tigers. Pour this bowl of bird's nest down that poisonous woman's throat. The father pointed at the poisonous soup on the table, his voice cold and emotionless. Tell everyone that Lady Gua fell ill suddenly and died violently. As for this wicked daughter, he gave Chu Wanfu, who was already crying loudly in terror on the bed, trying to get up and beg for mercy, a cold glance. Tomorrow morning, get a mule cart and send her far away to the ascetic monastery in Suzhou. Without my orders, she's not allowed to step outside the monastery ever again. Let her fend for herself. Lord, please spare my life. Father, please spare me. Amidst heartrending screams and struggles, the old women mercilessly forced Lady Gua's jaw open and poured the scalding bird's nest, laced with poison, down her throat. In moments, Lady Gua writhed in pain on the ground, blood flowing from all her orifices. Chu Wanfu was so terrified that she fainted on the spot. I watched the scene in silence. In their past lives, they reaped glory by stepping on my bones. Now, in this life, they've finally paid the ultimate price for their actions. As I emerged from the western courtyard, fine snowflakes began to drift down outside. The cold wind brushed against my burning cheeks, scattering the last traces of gloom from my heart. Miss Shisha rushed forward from outside the courtyard, holding a highly delicate purple sandalwood box in her hands. She spoke in a hushed voice. The manager of Baofeng Pawn Shop brought this personally just now. He said it's a New Year's gift from the master for you. I was slightly taken aback, then reached out to open the box. On the quiet, soft red silk lay a fine-quality jade hairpin, free of any impurities. The head of the hairpin was carved with a plum blossom that stood proudly against the frost. Beneath the jade hairpin was a blank piece of paper with no signature. On it were 2 lines written in the crisp, sharp style of Shoujin. The chronic illness is gone, and the new snow has melted. Wishing you well. I gazed at those gracefully written characters, my fingertips gently tracing the smooth contours of the jade hairpin, unable to help it. I smiled slightly amidst the falling snow. This lifetime's harsh winter has finally passed. My spring has just begun. The story is over. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.